Greetings, meat. Thank you for being our prey today. Before we begin, bite those like and subscribe buttons. It will help feed my hungry brood. And while you are at it, check out a place called Patreon for this meat snack. The access node is at the top of his page and in the description for this video recording. And let me quickly mention his tier 4 patrons: Russ of the Frozen North, New 5 AC, Nick, and Zachary Langmead. They sound delicious. And now, on with the mission debriefing. Meet the maw.
The Deathworlders, a story by Philip R. Johnson, a.k.a. Hambone, Hambone HFY, and Hambone 3110. Chapter 22, Warhorse, Part 6, Operation Nova Hound, Part 4. Dexter. Something didn't add up by Regari's reckoning. Nukes notwithstanding, the swarm of swarms was immense, and the hunters were always one step ahead of everybody's best when it came to cloaking technology. If there was even a ship there for the humans to detect and nuke, it was there because the hunters either wanted it to be, or else didn't care enough to hide it. Which meant that the humans didn't quite have the orbital superiority they thought they did. Which raised two questions. Why linger and lose ships? And why not just flatten the embassy compound from orbit? He exercised a little creative interpretation of his orders and decided to keep watch out in other directions besides north. The hunters hit by the rod from God weren't going anywhere, and Regarii had seen enough intelligence on hunter raids to know that they were far from stupid. Quite the reverse. They had a uniquely sadistic cunning, which was why he was able to save the team's lives. He was looking right at the dropships when they decloaked in the south on final approach. "Hostile contact south," he reported, desperately squeezing the radio until his claws creaked. Down below in the courtyard, he saw the Nova Hounds look up and south, then dive for cover. The opening salvo of coil gun fire that marched up the street therefore did nothing worse than punch some craters in the road surface and knock loose some masonry. The humans, whether by luck or incredible reflexes, escaped unharmed, though Snapfire's outer fabric suit ripped down his arm to reveal the armor scales beneath. "Stainless, Dexter. Looks like 20 hunter dropships just decloaked 200 meters to our south. They're landing to drop passengers. The column to the north still isn't moving," he elaborated. Stainless's voice was tight, focused, and precise. "Roger. Nova Hounds, reform the line. Face south. Warhorse, get the ETs upstairs. Dexter, how many hunters?" "As many as 300, Stainless," Regarii told him. The dropships took off again, engines making a tooth-grinding buzz as they angled up and over the roof. The Nova Hounds opened up a rippling volley of gunfire, which the hunters returned with interest. The street became a bilateral hailstorm of withering firepower, pockmarked with craters and fallen concrete where the hunter coil guns had blasted the architecture loose to create cover for the advance. "Where are those dropships going?" Stainless demanded. Regarii calculated in his head, then felt his ears plaster themselves to his head. "Stainless, Dexter," he reported. "They're intercepting the shuttle." Firebird. "Multiple bogies. Where the hell did they come from?" Riley snapped right and spat two short bursts at the new contacts. Anything coming in like that was definitely hostile. "Stay frosty. Righteous, Firebird, I have hostile aircraft on approach vector. Repeat, bogeys in the box. We see them, Firebird. Plans unchanged. Escort that shuttle. Riley threw them into a sideways drift to avoid a coil gun round. Semenza, light 'em up. Semenza was proving his value again. His voice was as level and cool as a frozen lake. No missiles, boss. We're an Atmo. E-war only from me. Shit. Yeah, call targets. Called. Warhorse. Rebar, low on ammo. I gotcha. The hunters were using something that looked like an old Bren gun. Long-barreled, slow to aim, and firing a steady rhythm of fat, heavy bullets that would have hit like a train if they'd found their mark. Thankfully, the monsters didn't seem to know a damn thing about bracing or supporting the weapon correctly and weren't strong enough to handle the kick. The human return fire, meanwhile, was savagely precise. Every time a hunter popped its head out of cover, it got blown away, and the cannibal fucks were losing half a dozen for every 10 feet of ground they advanced. But there were still a lot of them upright and advancing, and the air was full of lead. Adam gritted his teeth as 2 alien bullets punched clouds of gray dust out of the concrete next to him and dropped skidding on the increasingly gravel-strewn asphalt to fetch up next to Rebar, who slammed his last magazine into his M16 just as he arrived. Good timing. Sure. Adam left him 4 mags and then was up and running, delivering ammo to Snapfire. There was no time to think. With no gun of his own, there was only time to keep the others fighting. Firebird. The TS-2 spread out, then lanced in, picking hunter strikecraft and filling the sky with ammo, but their GAU-8S guns weren't really designed for dogfighting. 2 hunters burst, falling apart in rains of flaming metal, but that left 12 more. The shuttle pilot was doing his part well, at least. Every time the hunters drew a bead on him, he skipped out of the way, usually creating an opening for the TS-2s, but he was under constant threat. 4 more bogies down, then a 5th. Riley gritted her teeth against the G-forces as she shunted a jolt of power through the thrusters, sweating away precious capacitor reserves, and saving the difference by pulling it out of the inertial compensators, sending them skidding across the sky, rattling as they hit the thermal coming off the RFG's ground zero. 2 bursts, 2 bogies down, 5 left. 4 left as Firedog rampaged past her, gun howling. The swarm's technological superiority counted for squat when the human pilots had millisecond reaction times and could tolerate acceleration that would have killed their hunter counterparts. Shit! That one! Semenza's cool cracked. Riley saw why instantly. It was on the Shuttle 6, and the shuttle just didn't have the agility to pull off the evasive maneuvers that its pilot needed. Only one way to save the mission. Her vision grayed as Firebird leapt forward on a lightning bolt of extra juice to the engines, drawing a groan from Semenza. Then they sat on their instrument panels as she fired. The hunter evaporated. The coil gun round that would have killed the shuttle instead took out Firebird's left wing. Stainless. Fallen Angel, Firebird going down hard. Somehow, Jackson kept her sled level on spitting and stuttering yellow emergency force fields that spread out like the flaming wings of her stricken craft's namesake. She fell in a glittering halo that lashed out and grabbed onto the buildings, bleeding off the hurtling wreck's momentum by gouging out torso-sized chunks of concrete and steel from the buildings. She still skidded half the length of the street once she hit, but the force fields had done their job. She landed intact. Powell cursed, then grabbed his communicator.
Firebird stainless, he demanded. Any survivors?
The reply was a few seconds in coming, and came with a grunt of exertion. Stainless, Firebird 2. 2 out of 2 survivors, but my pilot's leg is all busted up. Time was tight, but they still had 2 able-bodied PJs on the team, and the stricken TS-2 was on the right side of the line at least.
Dexter, status of that hunter column.
Dexter, stainless. The column's still stopped by that bridge and reeling from the orbital strike. Minimal threat. Powell had to admit, the Gowan was proving to be worth a few multiples of his weight in gold.
Warhorse, baseball. Secure that aircrew.
On it! The 2 young men promptly handed off their cargoes of spare ammunition and got up and dashed towards the downed spaceplane.
Snapfire, Rebar, cover them. Titan, Legsy, fall back and defend the door.
All 4 men grabbed their own packs and hustled, falling back in a disciplined pattern under fire, covering each other's retreat. That left only the combat controllers, who had formed a rifle team on the ground floor window. Highland, who was up on the 3rd floor window sniping the hunters wherever they tried to take cover, Dexter, Powell, and himself.
CCTs to the roof, he ordered.
He touched the communicator again.
Dexter, Stainless, get to the roof.
The Gowans sounded relieved. Yes, Stainless. There was shouting from the door as the protectors returned, with Warhorse carrying Riley Jackson over his shoulder in a fireman's lift, trailed by her WSO. Her leg was a mess, flight suit stained crimson around where it had been cut open and field-dressed.
You've always got to be the center of attention, don't you?
Powell asked her, falling back on humor to cover his genuine relief that she'd not got herself killed. She managed a weak, bravado-fueled grin and extended a fist, though she was sweating, shaking, and tight-faced with pain. Good to see you again, Stainless. Looks like your boys turned out okay.
Don't fucking thank me until we're home,
he replied, though he bumped her fist in return, then turned to Warhorse.
Get her to the roof, mate.
Yes, sir. More explosions sounded outside, punctuated by chattering gunfire. Rebar and Snapfire fell back into view, firing back down the road before ducking for the door. Titan was caught in open ground, and 3 rounds sparked against his armor, knocking him off his feet. As he tried to stagger upright, a 4th round hit and penetrated, and he collapsed, groaning around a hole in his abdomen. Powell didn't even need to give an order. Before he even had a chance, Baseball leapt into action, putting the pitching arm for which he was aptly named to work and hurling a frag grenade into the heart of the Hunter advance with such force that it lodged in one monster's chest, knocking it off its feet and sending the rest scattering for cover before it went off. He pounced on Titan and dragged him into the safety of the building even as a burst of renewed firepower missed his head by inches before they made the safety of the doorway. Fortunately, the Hunters weren't braving the saw yet, but that wouldn't last long at all. Much closer, and they'd be in nerve jam range. Stainless, Highland. More Hunter dropships decloaking north. They're mobbing us. Powell grimaced.
CCTs, where's that shuttle? He demanded.
Stainless, Starfall. It's on final approach. Landed in 20 seconds. Got a lot of Hunter bogies coming in, though. We need to be gone in 1 mic. It would have been nice if time had slowed, if he'd had a minute to think through the options carefully. But the decision was foregone. Somebody was going to have to stay down here and hold the Hunters off long enough for the shuttle to take on passengers and dust off. It was the kind of decision that Powell hated. He hated it especially this time because his options weren't limited. There were no options. Both the CCTs were on the roof. Murray was 3 floors up. The 2 PJs had their hands full, and really, this was a job for a close-quarters combat specialist. But that man was going to die. No maybe, no last-minute rescue. He was ordering a man to his death, and there was only one right option, because the alternative was for everyone to die. He clamped down hard on his self-hatred and gave the order. Dexter. The human shuttle pilot had nerves of steel. Regarii had to give him that much. Hovering level with a building's roof while aircraft thundered overhead was... He didn't have time to think about it further. Warhorse emerged from the roof access door carrying another human in a flight suit and yelled at him, gesticulating with his free arm.
Dexter, get in the fucking ride!
Regarii scrambled in, squeezing in as far as he could while the Kortai, Kurumbura, and the humans piled in behind him. Being built to the scale of Dominion species, they still had plenty of room, but there was still one missing, even though the ramp was coming up and they were ascending. Where's... Stainless shot a glare at him that could have eviscerated anybody in the shuttle. Then he leaned against the bulkhead, slid down it, put his head between his knees and his hands on the back of his head, and shook. Master Sergeant James Legsy Jones. He would have liked to have gone down shooting and hollering, but there was no time for hollering. There was no time for anything. Just shoot. Just fight. Just buy them time. He'd taken Baseball's saw and fired it until the box was empty and the barrel glowing. That alone was enough. He saw the shuttle take off and streak into the sky. Mission accomplished. Then he fought with his SMG until he ran out of magazines. The last of the TS-2 fighters jumped out with thumps of inrushing air, recalled once the shuttle was no longer in danger of being intercepted. Then he fought with his pistol until there were no more rounds to fire, for honor. Then he fought with his knife. Then with his fists. He held out long enough to still be standing when the second rod from God hit, sent to destroy the wreck of Firebird and his suit. The hunters didn't get the satisfaction of killing him.
Admiration.
The Alpha of Alphas generated a mental note of disapproval aimed at the Alpha Builder, but the lesser being was not paying attention. It had watched a lone Deathworlder fight 100 of its muscle-grafted experimental strongest brood warriors, and arguably win. Everything from the biology to the weaponry, armor, and tactics spoke of wealthy fields of research to come. For a builder, there was no greater anticipation. If only that equipment had not been destroyed.
Deference. If the Alpha of Alphas desires it, this one can begin work on the next generation of innovations immediately, it suggested. Blunt disinterest. Do so.
The Alpha Builder pretended not to notice the emotional context. It simply stood and departed, already mentally preparing the calculations and experiments. Left alone in the darkened silence, the Alpha of Alphas finally indulged in an unashamed broadcast of its emotional state, only once it was sure there were truly no hunters within broadcast range.
Admiration.
Regarii. The strangest part was that they recovered, and how. Caledonia's flight deck was different to how he remembered it. The shuttle sat down with a half-meter's clearance in a space otherwise filled by crates, equipment, workbenches, tool racks, and a structure of piping and plastic sheets in the corner. Medics stepped in, carting the 2 wounded humans away on gurneys. Regari's amputation was examined and declared to be as clean and well-dressed as if he had had it off in an operating theater. There was nothing to be done for it, at least not that was available on the ship. He barely paid attention. He was watching the Nova Hounds. Once out of the shuttle, they had been attended to by technicians, who helped them remove the outer layers of their suits, revealing the variety of shades of brown and white skin, but uniform hair length. Beneath that was the armor, gunmetal scales that clearly formed the bulk of the suit's weight, as each man sighed a profound sigh of relief once they were off. The suits were taken away to be dismantled, serviced, and cleaned as a powerful musk hit Regari's nostrils. Each one of the Nova Hounds smelt of sweat, salt, and exertion, and the dark gray bottom layer was black with moisture in several places. It was also clearly better than skin tight, as they had to wriggle out of it. Warhorse's had worn through at the left armpit. He just snarled like an angry beast, grabbed it with his right hand, and tore the underlayer right off his body in a ragged strip. Regarii blinked. He'd known the human was strong, but seeing what that strength looked like was something else entirely. It was almost ugly, uncomfortably reminiscent of those red, raw super hunters. He could almost see the strands and fibers of muscles under the skin. So many muscles. Bulging power in places Gowans didn't have places. They surprised him further by removing their garments altogether and then retreating behind the plastic screen for a shower. Zhu had always been squeamish about removing her clothes. He remembered that. Even when bathing, despite being in the company of beings who, biologically and physiologically, couldn't find her attractive, and despite that Gowans viewed clothing more as being practical and useful rather than necessary, she had seemed to go to great lengths to avoid letting any more of her skin be visible than was inevitable. The Nova Hounds didn't seem to care, though they did return from the evolutions wearing loose, comfortable clothing. None of them had any kind of expression. They just found an array of mats and blankets in the corner, sat down upon them, still and silent, staring at nothing. Before long, every last one of them had fallen asleep. Not long after them, Regarii found a spot near Warhorse, curled up, and fell asleep himself. He woke to heat. It was stifling, humid, and pungent in the flight bay, and his chest was already heaving and panting coolish air across his tongue before he woke up. Somebody was making simple music by tapping steadily on something, which made a hollow metal thump. Somebody else was syncopating it by tapping on 2 or 3 other things: crates, equipment, the shuttle hull. There was an actual instrument involved, the twangy one that Zhu had called a guitar. He didn't know very much about human music, but he thought he recognized a genre called blues. He sat up. "Hey, wondering when you'd wake up?" Regarii stretched. Warhorse sat next to him against the wall. He was putting what looked like pictures back in his pack. "How long?" "8 hours or so." Regarii sat up more. "I thought we were leaving capital," he asked. "I was expecting to be in a Gowan hospital by now. And why is it so hot in here?" "We're in low emissions mode, containing our heat so the hunters don't see us." "Okay, but why?" Regarii demanded. "They started dismantling the station. Guess we're staying here to watch them do it, figure out why. Until then, we're cargo." Warhorse shrugged. "Sorry, man. Don't worry. I'll keep an eye on your arm and we'll get a field hospital set up in the other bay. You're in good hands." Regarii duck-nodded. "I know, and I'm grateful. Without you, the clan of females would never have known who Guillemai's choice to replace her as Mother Supreme is." "Is that like appointing an heir or just a recommendation?" "A recommendation, but one that's usually listened to, from what I gather. I was only a few days old when Guillemai was appointed." Regarii shrugged. He learned early on that humans and Gowans had that gesture in common. "Gonna have to be a few days, man," Warhorse told him. "They're stripping the whole station, and, it's a big station." Regarii chittered, a touch bitterly. "It'll take them months to appoint a successor anyways, even with her recommendation," he said. "I'm going to miss her, though." "Yeah?" "Oh, yes. She wasn't just somebody I worked for. If she'd been younger," he trailed off, "though Ima might not have approved." "This the Ima that fought so hard to have your human friend adopted into the clan?" "That's right. She's also the mother of my most recent cub, and she and I—" He made a little growling noise, the equivalent of a human clearing their throat. "It's complicated." "Man, I know how that feels." "I doubt it," Regarii countered. "Monogamy is the norm in your culture. In ours, it would be something of a scandal." "You two are exclusive?" "I'd like to be," Regarii confessed. "I haven't told her as much. She and I went through a lot together, but I don't know how she'd take it." Warhorse made a loud, explosive sound that was probably a laugh. "Oh, man, I definitely know how that feels," he exclaimed, then calmed. "At least the going through a lot together thing." "What do you think I should do?" "Brother, I am the wrong man for female advice." They sat in silence for a while until Regarii noticed that Warhorse and some other of the Nova Hounds were giving him strange looks. "What?" "You're panting." "Well, yes," Regarii said. "That's how we deal with heat. We pant. You sweat." He gestured to the fact that everybody on deck was stripped down to the bare minimum they could get away with, and even that was dark wet and sticking to the skin. "That's amazing." "Why?" Man, it just triggers some weird instincts, I guess. Forget it. Maybe we should fill one of these crates with water for you." "Great father Phew, no!" Regarii protested. "Wet fur smells worse than you do." This caused Warhorse's expression to get even stranger. It was almost like a smile, but wide-eyed rather than narrow-eyed. Regarii had no idea what it meant. "What?" he demanded. "Nothing." "Fine, keep your secrets." He endured the occasional smiling glance for a while longer, listening to the music while Warhorse sighed and retrieved a few things. Hard copy prints of some kind from his bag and began to flip through them. "What are those?" "Oh, fuck it, you're not human. This is Ava." Regarii scrutinized the pictures. Ava had plainly sat up and taken the images herself, and they were obviously a mating display. It was the only way to explain the curious poses and the odd choice of clothing, both calculated to show off her body to best effect, while still hiding away those parts of her anatomy that he knew humans were particularly squeamish about. The prince had a slightly worn, often handled look around the edges. He had to admit, even across the species barrier, he could see the appeal. When you came down to the mechanics of it, there were only so many ways to be bipedal, and only so many ways to birth live young through a plantigrade bipedal's pelvis. The 4 mammary glands on a Gowan female were at the waist and small, as opposed to the human's high and larger pair, and the bald skin was totally unattractive, but the curve of flank and hip was almost identical, aside from being more pronounced in humans due to the larger muscles, shorter torso, and longer legs. "Not that I'm an expert," he declared, "but if I had the mouth for it, I think a wolf whistle would be in order." Warhorse laughed at that, then sighed as he looked at the pictures again. "I hope she gives me a second shot," he said wistfully. "Second shot? She turned you down?" "We went through a lot together. Then we went through a lot without each other, and I was dumb enough to think that she'd just—" Whatever word he was searching for went unfound. There was a general looking up and standing up as Stainless stepped onto the flight deck, rather more professionally turned out than as men in a full-body uniform of some kind, rather than the sleeveless, short-legged things that the rest of the Nova Hounds were wearing. He even managed the impressive feat of managing to look comfortable in the heat. "Fall in," he ordered quietly. Everyone gathered around him in a rough half-circle, the Nova Hounds themselves at the front, and all of the technicians and attendants and support staff forming a second row behind them. "First things first, Titan's going to be fine. Was a nasty injury, but he's had surgery and a Crew D shot, so he should be up and about in a day or 2. Major Jackson suffered a fractured fibula and some nasty lacerations, but her early prognosis suggests a full recovery and return to duty in due course." There was a murmur of relief, which fell silent again as Stainless raised a hand. He began, then cleared his throat. "We've had the unhappy privilege of watching 3 legendary men burn brightly today." Heads lowered. Regarii watched Baseball put his arms around Warhorse's enormous shoulders and pull him close. "All of our lights will go out in time," Stainless continued. That mobile, malleable, expressive human face was alive with muscles wrestling under the surface, fighting to maintain dignity. "All of our journeys reach their end. What counts at the end of it all is how that journey was spent. And I, for one, will consider myself blessed that, for a while, I was able to journey alongside these epic 3 and call them my comrades, my friends, and my brothers." He swallowed, lowered his head for a second, then raised it again, and Regarii admired the strength he managed to force into his voice. "Let these mementos enter their history of this new regiment and mark the start of a new tradition. We will never leave a man behind, whether he comes back with his shield, upon it, or in keepsake only, he comes back. We all make it home, one way or another." As nods of agreement created a gentle susurrus around the bay, he produced 3 small battered items from his pocket. "Staff Sergeant Brady Stevenson, Thor." He laid the little patch of cloth that Warhorse had salvaged from the crushed armor on the table. "Sergeant First Class Leo Price, Sterling." A metal tag on a long chain. "Master Sergeant James Jones." Another swatch of cloth. "Legsy." By now, all 7 men standing directly in front of them had their arms interlinked across one another's shoulders or around each other's waists. Around the bay, Deathworlders were standing at attention, some fighting back their emotions, others displaying them openly. Stainless took a deep breath. "It's still early days for the SOR. We've been blooded today, and despite our losses, we acquitted ourselves superbly under the most difficult circumstances. In keeping with the finest traditions of our parent units," he declared, "I expect that we will go on to great things in due course, which is why I'm going to conclude with what I hope will be the regimental motto, so listen closely. Remember this." Heads raised and gave him their full attention. What a piece of work is man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form, and moving how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like a god. He set his jaw and saluted fiercely. Every one of the humans present copied him. When gods fall, we will remember them. 20 humans spoke as one. We will remember them. 2 torturous days passed, punctuated by a steady rhythm. First, a siren would sound, marking the moment when their orbit carried them below the horizon from the swarm's perspective, and the ship would wake up, flinging out its force fields and radiating all of its accumulated heat towards the sun in a concentrated beam with breathtaking efficiency. Regarii could feel the temperature drop until he was comfortable again, and the humans were sighing with relief even as their breath condensed on the newly chilled air. Chores would be done, the water would be recycled, and people would take comfort showers and use the latrine, making the best use of every moment that the ship could operate normally before its orbit carried it back into the line of sight with the hunters, and they were forced to endure another 3 hours of mounting heat and humidity as best they could. In hindsight, not taking Warhorse up on the bath had been wise. He would have been shivering and at risk of hypothermia at the cold end of the cycle. They spent the time watching movies, huddled around a tiny tablet computer in a way that must surely have made the heat worse, but at least it was entertainment. He wound up sitting on Warhorse's shoulders again, so as to have a good view. Regarii had watched a number of movies with Zhu, and had mostly enjoyed them, though he had wondered what in Gao's name she got out of horror movies. She'd mostly watched them from behind her hands, squirming and occasionally shrieking, while the poor traumatized Gowans had been even worse affected. Humans could be dark in their storytelling, it seemed. He'd not watched a movie like this one, though. It almost had a Gowan in it. Too short, oddly proportioned, with digigrade feet and strange facial proportions and markings that suggested a chromosomal disorder, and clearly built on Deathworlder anatomy, making him stockier and far stronger than any real Gowan, but still. Why do you want to save the galaxy? Because I'm one of the idiots who lives in it! It was ridiculous, but also a huge amount of fun, and certainly distracted them from the relentless heat. He was required to check with the hospital set up in the bay on the opposite side of the ship every few hours, and was surprised when they removed his dressings. The stump underneath had healed perfectly, unbelievably fast, though who had snuck him a dose of Crosier, when and how, were a mystery. When he got back to Gao, he'd be ready to receive a prosthetic the moment he landed. Finally, orders were given. Objects cleared away, loose equipment battened down, and everyone settled down ready for a jump, which passed with barely a perceptible jolt in his stomach. At once, the cooling cycle started, and this time the temperature stayed down. The long wait was over. Major Owen Powell. HMS Sharman had a few design quirks that had been intended to keep it inside the footprint occupied by the original camp, and one of these was its narrow hallways and corridors, the narrowest of which Powell was certain was the one outside his office. Throw in that SOR men were universally large, and that made getting past one another a challenge sometimes, which was why he paused at the intersection on seeing Ares coming towards him. The younger man picked up the pace to squeeze past him at the corner. "Shouldn't you be seeing Ava, Sergeant?" Powell asked. "She'll be worried about you." "We were just organizing the wake, sir," Adam explained. Powell nodded. "Good, and I'll be bloody well upset if you lot don't drink every drop of alcohol on this planet. You hear me?" "Yes, sir." Powell exhaled through his nose, aware that he was going to miss having an NCO with whom he could get away with sharing a joke. But then again, that hadn't been the nature of his relationship with Legsy to begin with, either. "Good night, sir," Adam said, then turned to go. "Ares." The young man turned to face him again. "Sir?" "Legsy and I were in the habit of sharing a post-mission drink. You'd be very welcome to join me in keeping that tradition alive." Adam blinked at him, then nodded, swallowing. "I'd like that," he managed.
Come on.
Powell unlocked his office and led the way in, visiting the top of his filing cabinet and retrieving a bottle of Glenfiddich and 2 cut crystal glasses. "One for us, and one each for anybody who didn't come back," he explained, pouring just enough for there to definitely be whiskey in each glass, but not enough that 4 of them would actually get either of them intoxicated. They chimed glasses, then knocked them back. He was slightly impressed that Adam had no worse reaction to it than clearing his throat and a slightly pinched expression for a second, considering it was probably his first taste of whiskey. Powell poured the second pair of drinks. "I'm recommending Price for the Victoria Cross, and Legsy for the Georgia Cross," he said. "And as far as I'm concerned, Jackson and Semenza deserve the Medal of Honor. They saved the bloody lot of us, but they'll probably settle for less. There'll be a few other decorations getting handed out, too." He paused and shrugged. "We'll see how it goes. Not sure I care about medals right now." They drank again. Adam had a look of a man who wanted to ask a question, but was restraining himself. "You've got permission to speak freely right now, lad," Powell told him. "Make use of it. I don't grant it often." "Just a question, sir." "Go on, then." "How are you holding up?" "Christ, remind me not to let you ask freely too often. You get right down to business, don't you?" "Sorry, sir, No, fair question." He appreciated it, in fact. He rubbed the bridge of his nose and drank his third glass while he thought. Adam copied him. I try not to be a weak man, but ordering a friend to his death." Powell put his glass down and reached for the bottle one last time. "It beats you up." "I'd be kind of worried if it didn't, sir." Powell poured again and nodded. "True. And it'd be a lonely fucking job if I didn't get on with my men, you know. It needs to be understood that the mission comes first. When it's one man versus every man, I won't be fucking sentimental about it. I have to send the right man for the job, whoever that might be." "I didn't get that when I signed up," Adam confessed. "Well, what about now that you know what it's like?" "Sir, speaking candidly?" Powell handed him his glass. "I thought we bloody were." "Well then, if I was the right man for the job, I guess I wouldn't just expect you to send me. I'd want you to." Powell nodded, staring at his glass for a moment. "Aye, and I reckon Legsy would have said the same." They toasted and drank for the 4th and final time. "Go on, Sergeant. You've got better things to be doing and prettier people to be doing them with than commiserating with your commanding officer," he said as he set his glass down. "I'm coping." "Yes, sir. Good night." "Good night, Sergeant." "You're approaching a commune of females and cubs, male. Who comes?" Regarii knew not to underestimate the females who took guard duty outside the communes at night. Ceremonial though their role was, they took it seriously and would be expert shots with those pulse rifles. Not that they ever did shoot anybody, but it paid to respect that fact. He halted in the light. "Officer Regarii of Clan Whitecrest," he announced, "formerly of the executive staff of Mother Supreme Guiamai." "Regarii?" One of the guards stepped forward to get a better look at him. "Wasai! It is you! We thought you were dead!" He waved his left arm to show off his new cybernetic paw. "I very nearly was," he said. "You know him, Sister Myon?" the other guard asked. "He is who he says he is," Myon assured her. "I'll escort him." "Who are you here to see, male?" the second guard interrogated him, clearly not satisfied with Myon's reassurance. To judge from Myon's resigned and impatient body language, this was nothing unusual. Maybe he should court the young female after all. If nothing else, Myon would benefit from knowing she has allies. "I'm here to inform the late Mother Supreme's chosen successor of her nominations," he announced, picking one of the 3 truthful answers he could have given on the grounds that it was probably the least controversial. "You may enter." The guards finally stopped glaring at him, though she didn't unwind exactly. Myeon just flicked her ears irritably and walked alongside him through the commune's doors. "Did she choose Ima?" he asked. "Yulna," Regarii revealed. Ima's voice made them both freeze on the spot. "That makes sense." She had been cuddling and rocking a tiny newborn in the moonlight, almost invisibly still, and chittered a little by the way both Myeon and Regarii flinched. "Yulna's a good choice. She won't be afraid to speak her mind." She had been cuddling and rocking a tiny newborn in the moonlight, almost invisibly still, and chittered a little at the way both Myeon and Regarii flinched. "Yulna's a good choice. She won't be afraid to speak her mind." "I will leave you two alone, shall I?" Myeon stepped away a little out of earshot. Ima made an amused face. "That poor little sister has watched too many human romance movies," she declared. "What do you mean?" "Oh, she's convinced that you and I are an item or something," Ima growled a little wryly. "You've seen those human movies. You know how they react. They get jealous over mating partners. That's not us, is it?" "Well," Regarii paused, then nodded, bearing his disappointment. "No, you're right. It's not." She stood and gave him a friendly nose rub, as of old and close friends. "I like you too much, Regarii. I'd hate to fall out with you over mating contracts." That, at least, was a dose of welcome, soothing cold water to balm his burned self-esteem. "You do?" "Oh, yes." Ima glanced up and down the commune concourse, then leaned in conspiratorially. "If I had to choose just one... Wait, what happened to your paw?" She'd tried to take it intimately, and found herself holding smooth carbon fiber instead of fur. He grimaced at it. "It's a long story. I'll tell you what happened over breakfast, if you'll do me the favor." "Name it." "It's about Sister Myeon." Starship Negotiable Curiosity. Deep Space. "I think we've found one of them."
One of them? I thought we were looking for a single escape pod.
There was a sigh from the ship's owner and commander. "Yes, Hizkvik, we're looking for a single escape pod, but the ship launched 2. Hizkvik blinked at his Kortai employer.
"But, Bedu, if the ship launched 2, why are we after only 1?
Bedu repeated his weary sigh. "Because the client is paying us 5 million Directorate currency units for the escape pod with the one of your cousins on it. And no, not for the other one."
"But why?"
Murmurt interrupted him, saving Bedu's headache from progressing any further.
"Client says, client pays. We do. No more questions,"
she snapped. Bedu nodded subtly at his Kurumboro pilot, thanking her.
"But..."
"Hizkvik," Bedu snapped, then mellowed his tone. "I tell you this as a colleague of 3 years. The subject of your species' remarkable intelligence is the focus of frequent discussion amongst the Kortai, and may I say that you yourself are a type specimen for the exact qualities that we find so fascinating. Nevertheless, there is a time for not asking questions, and this is one such. Hizkvik was practically glowing with pride.
"Why, thank you, Bedu,"
he said. "Indeed. Please be so kind as to man the scoop field should we need to bring them aboard."
"Of course."
Once the gangly blue shape of their junior crewman had left the bridge, Murmurt shot her employer a questioning glance. "What?" Bedu asked her.
"I've never known you to tell a direct lie before,"
she said quietly. "Nor did I this time," Bedu replied amiably.
"So, Vizkatic intelligence really is the subject of frequent discussion amongst the Kortai?"
Bedu granted himself the luxury of satisfaction at his own cleverness. The Kurumboro was by no means an idiot herself, and that meant if he'd snuck his veiled insult past her, then Hizkvik would never notice it. "Indeed, he told her. We often find ourselves wondering how a species so terminally dim ever managed to invent the wheel. Murmurk took a second to process that, then made kind of a fluttering, purring noise in her chest, her species' equivalent of laughter.
I see. And we're coming up on the life raft.
Does the transponder code match? Bedu demanded, examining the little puck-shaped craft on his screen.
Please,
she clucked, annoyed.
That was the first thing I checked.
Very good. Run the disruption and scan their contents.
Won't they notice?
If they are who we want, it will not matter. And if they are not, well, they will never find out what happened. Please, run the scan. Murmurk raised a hand to acknowledge the order, then followed it. A second later, data poured into Bedu's command screen. 3 Deathworlders, alas, he noted. All quite badly injured, too. Fine. Stop the scan. We'd better pick up that other ALV wake.
Are you sure they won't have noticed?
Murmurk asked, already changing course. Behind them, the escape pod blinked away as the slight change in their vector translated to a separation of light seconds and a heartbeat. At most, they may have felt a sensation of time having done something strange, Bedu conceded. I doubt they will pay it a second thought. Demeter Road, Folktha, Cimbrian, the Far Reaches. Adam Oddies. A little wooden Eden sign that Sarah had once given them rattled when Ava opened the door. She paused on seeing him, then threw herself straight into a hug with such force that, despite the disparity between her mass and his strength, Adam had to take a step back to absorb her. Oh my God, Adam! She couldn't even fit her arms all the way around him. She had been right. Things had changed. Are you okay? People are saying Legsy didn't come back. Yeah, Adam nodded. Ava made a sad, almost childish little sound of loss. Are you all right? I wouldn't have come back if not for him, Adam told her. Or Leo either. None of us would. She retreated into her apartment, then sat down on the couch. God damn it. Adam shut the door and then entered and sat next to her. Yeah. There was a melancholy little silence for a while, which Adam finally broke. Legsy gave me some advice before he left, before we headed out. This may not be the best time to follow up on it, but... What? He helped me figure out what you are to me. Ava blinked at him, then turned to face him again, giving him her attention. Adam took her hand. You're this amazing, gorgeous, talented woman that I'd like to get to know better, he said. Ava paused, but then a smile broke through her face like a dawn rising. Yeah? Adam nodded. Ava looked at him for a long, contemplative moment, then sighed, and he could see the tension and misery flow out of her as she wiped away a tear. It's a date, she said. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am the Casual Deathworlder, your host, and this has been the conclusion, at long last, of The Deathworlders, Chapter 22. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you, especially this last segment. It was a lot of fun. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and smash those like and subscribe buttons and drop us a comment down below, and maybe go over and check us out over on Patreon. Love to see you over there. And, as always, a huge shout out to my editor, Gregor. Thank you very much, buddy. Sorry for the delays, and hopefully this one isn't as much of a butchered mess as the last couple that I sent you. Okay, now, moving onward and upward. I think I'm going to try something. I hear that the best thing to do for YouTube algorithms is keep the episodes to 30 minutes or less. So I'm going to start trying to do that and do slightly shorter form videos. So more episodes per chapter, especially since some of these chapters coming up are still fairly long. Just nothing quite like chapter 22, thank
God.
So hopefully that might bring us some more traffic. Yeah. Now then, question, who's got the question? I know. What is your absolute favorite starship name of all time? For me, I'm going to hold off on that one because it would actually be a spoiler because it's something coming up later in this very book. But as always, leave your answers in the comments down below. And until next time, be safe, be well. I love you all. Bye-bye.